Hello, everyone, and good morning. Welcome to our live feed update for July 14th. I'm your host, Taran Armstrong, and I'm here today to update you on everything that happened yesterday on the Big Brother 27 live feeds. It was day 6 in the house, and we have a lot to catch up on today. Hello. We are back. I'm live here on YouTube and Twitch and many places to talk to you about what happened on the live feeds. Welcome back to Big Brother after a year away. It's been so long, but we are back to talk about the live feeds all season long. And what a night one of feeds. What a night one of feeds. I am here on my own, of course, to talk to you about this first foray into the world of live feeds. If you have not checked out any of the coverage that we have done so far this season, I do have a bit of an announcement, if you haven't heard, which is that, me, this person who has been doing these live feed updates for such a long time, who grew up watching Big Brother, I have decided to take my knowledge and write a book about the show. It's called Behind the Mirror, and I have it right here. It's a book. It's being published. It's basically just if you took the live feed updates, but then sort of applied it to the whole show. Just a little bit. I'm telling the history of the show, but in my own way, where I'm trying to really, tell it in like a way that feels like it's a proper story, giving you the important bits that are relevant to the analysis that I'm making, and all kinds of fun things in there along the way. It has been a labor of love over the last few years, and it is currently available for pre-order. If you go to taranarmstrong.com, you can get a signed copy if you want over at the book catapult. The link is there on the site, and have some fun with it. I've enjoyed doing these live feed updates for a decade now, and all of you that are avid live feed update viewers and listeners, I really appreciate you all. So just want to share that with you before we got into the season. But let's get into what's going on. Let's get into the cast, the house, what's happening, because it's quite a lot, if we're being honest. I have a bit of a board for you. I've got some names, some pictures, and I've got some updates on who won things. So let's talk about it. Okay. As you all know, Vince is the HOH, and in the episode last night, he nominated Ashley, Amy, and Zay for eviction. However, when the feeds came up last night, we discovered that somebody won the veto that planned to use it. And that person was, in fact, Ashley. Ashley won the veto. And here's our graphic. There it is, if you're watching the YouTube version. I was a couple minutes late because I realized we didn't have a layout for solo me and the graphic. So I threw one together, but here we are. Vince, the HOH, nominated, as I said, Ashley, Zay, and Amy, but Ashley won the veto. I think, in fact, that the veto competition was something along the lines of who can take the longest shower. So she obviously won that one. Fun fact about the shower situation. Vince did mention last night that he was informed about that drama after the fact, implying that he had no idea that the shower situation was even an issue until people told him about it, which I thought was pretty funny. It's a pretty funny situation. We do get quite a sense that Ashley was the intended target here, actually. That Zay, who I feel like they implied was a target for Vince, has since removed himself from that target list for Vince and much of the house, although there are still a few people who definitely would like to see Zay go. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. So I am actually going to take you a little bit down the path of what actually happened last night in some amount of order. Normally for the first night of feeds, I'll usually take you in a kind of like overview kind of situation. Like I'll talk about the state of the house as a whole and talk about the structures that we have tried to figure out, and like what exists and what doesn't, and so on and so forth. We play detective, which is very very relevant to a Hotel Mystère in the mystery theme of the season. I also apologize for my general appearance and sound. I am in the middle of a 24-hour stream on Twitch, and I did not sleep much last night watching all of these feeds. But basically, I'm going to tell you about the general structure of what we think we know about where people stand in the house. But then also, there were a lot of events that happened last night that are fairly informative about the situation, not only in the game, but for the week and for things moving forward. So, first of all, we saw in the episode that there was an alliance called Triple Threat. This was the alliance that Jimmy helped start with himself, Morgan, and Mickey. This does appear to be a lasting alliance to some degree, so keep that in mind. However, we have our big power alliance this season as well. And that is currently the most relevant alliance in the game. This alliance is called the Heavy Hitters. The Heavy Hitters. The idea being that all of the people in the alliance are the true heavy hitters of the season. The big dogs, you know? The true players. Because, that never happens. It's people in the alliance think that they're the only people playing the game. This alliance is another Jimmy operation, at least in the sense that he feels like he's running it, because that's the vibe we just get from Jimmy. But there is a bit of a surprise here. Watching Jimmy in the episodes, you're kind of feeling like, yeah, Jimmy, he's a bit anti-Rachel, right? It's all he talks about in the diary room. It's like, Rachel, she had her shot. And money. She's a threat. Gotta get this Rachel out. And yet, The very first thing we open on when the feeds start, the very first bit of game talk we heard this entire season on the feeds was, in fact, between Jimmy and Rachel, talking about who Vince is going to nominate for the renomination after Ashley uses the veto. What's going on? Surely they're just blowing smoke. Because we know that Jimmy is just not a fan of Rachel. He's not going to be working for real with Rachel. He's just placating, right? Like he's just having a conversation. Seemingly not. Something has happened in these few days between Jimmy and Rachel, and Jimmy now appears, all outward appearances, to be pro Rachel. He is working with her. He is in an alliance with her. He is even vouching for her to other members of said alliance. You have to assume that he's still somewhat skeptical, but you'd never know it watching the live feeds at the moment because he's fully in with Rachel, which brings me to the consistency of this heavy hitters alliance. Because Rachel Riley is in it. Rachel Riley, Jimmy, Morgan, Zach, Vince, and Riley. Not Rachel Riley, but Riley. Those 6 players. I'm just list them one more time from the top. I'm going to list them in alphabetical order so you can follow along in the graphic if you want. Riley up there is a member. Morgan, Rachel, Jimmy, Vince, and I think I missed one. Zach. I started with Riley instead of Zach. It's not alphabetical order. Zach is up at the top. So yes, weirdly no Mickey. Weirdly no Mickey in this alliance, which does imply that it was not entirely started by Jimmy for some reason. And Rachel's inclusion is also strange. None of her people are in this. It's just her. Riley's inclusion is also strange because very few people in the alliance seem to even know how or why he is included at all. So who started the alliance? You kind of have to assume Jimmy, but if it was Jimmy, did he intentionally leave Mickey out of it? Probably. That's just probably what happened. But basically, the core of this alliance is Zach, Morgan, Jimmy, and Vince to some degree. Rachel is in it, but hasn't been very involved in much of the discussions with the alliance from what we've seen so far. And by the end of the night, we'll talk about part of why we feel like her being in it is, not very solid. Riley, as I mentioned, his inclusion last night, they were like, why is he even in this alliance? He doesn't want to be seen with them. He very rarely talks much game with them unless they go to him one-on-one. And they're not sure what to think about it. However, I will say that when they do talk to Riley one-on-one, he does a fairly decent job of convincing them that he's on board, despite the fact that he may or may not be on board. He's a bit of a wild card at the moment in terms of where his actual motivations lie. So this is the big alliance, the heavy hitters. You might already get the sense that they are not exactly the most cohesive bunch, and that is because they're not. They're just not. Their incentives and their motivations and their sort of their own little plots for what they want to do are already conflicting. For instance, you have Amy on the block still with Ashley coming off of it. Um, Obviously, Rachel does not want Amy to go in any way, shape, or form. Rachel wants Amy to stay. However, that's not a motivation that almost anyone else in the alliance has. They have no incentive or reason to keep Amy around. So, potential point of conflict. Another point of conflict is that with Zay on the block, Morgan really wants Zay to go. Morgan, of course, being the other woman in the alliance. And she feels like players like Zach and Riley and Jimmy really would like to keep Zay around because they can bro down with him, but Zay doesn't benefit her game at all. And she's kind of trying to throw her weight around a little bit to see if she's able to say, hey, well, why don't we take Zay out? He is the bigger threat. The men of the alliance, though, have no interest whatsoever in voting Zay out. And this is causing much frustration from Morgan. So there's a bit of a conflict there. In addition to all of that, there's a lot going on with Vince. There's a lot going on with Vince that we will need to talk about. But I think the bottom line right now is that, never say never when it comes to big alliances. But this alliance does not feel built to last, at least in its current state. You got people all over the place, not having the same interest, not having the same goals, not really getting even along very well. And when you hear about Vince's plan at the end of the night, you're gonna kind of be very surprised. But there's one more thing. I mentioned that Mickey was not included in this alliance, despite being in a trio with Jimmy. There is reason to believe that Jimmy has fully told Mickey about the alliance. They had a conversation, fairly brief, where Jimmy was talking to Mickey about the big alliance that she was not in. So it does appear also that the alliance is not even really a secret to some select people that Jimmy has decided to tell. Primarily being Mickey at this point. In that conversation, Jimmy suggested to Mickey that she create her own kind of counter alliance. But that they both then intentionally break both big alliances and then do something else from there. Jimmy's a gamer, if you hadn't noticed. He's very very rabid in the gamer department. I want to like properly give you the Jimmy. I forgot to grab sunglasses, but the Jimmy vibe on the feeds is like if he could be up on one of those like those like the things where people carry. There's like 4 people and they're carrying a thing, and there's like a pillow on top, and then there's like a guy up there like eating grapes. You know what I'm talking about? That's Jimmy all the time. Like he somehow manages to have that vibe and expression everywhere he goes. Just like Let's do this. All right. Let's come on. We know what we're doing here. He just walks around like he owns the place. He talks to people like he owns them. And if he gets pushback on anything that he wants, he jumps down that person's throat. In particular, when Morgan was bringing up, basically she was like, well, I know you guys really want to keep Zay. And he would be like, no, we're keeping Zay. It's like, yeah, I just wanted to, no, that's what we're doing. That's what we're doing. We're not voting out Zay. Jimmy has gotten a reputation for being a gamer, being a liar, being a very aggressive player. And many people outside of his alliance are looking very hard at him, wanting to target him and feeling like he is very transparent in what he's doing. He's trying to put together all these different groups and playing super, super hard, which is obviously not good for Jimmy, but he is fairly well insulated within his own groups at the moment, although he does tend to kind of piss them off at times. So that's Jimmy in a nutshell at the moment. And so this is the guy who seemingly has told Mickey about the heavy hitters and is trying to get her to create another different alliance so that they can kind of play the alliances off one another to some degree. Not bad ideas in general. Like what Jimmy is doing makes a ton of sense on paper. He has created a big alliance. Within that alliance, he has multiple smaller sub-alliances. He has the triple threat. There is also an alliance called the Triplets. And this one consists of Jimmy, Vince, and one other person that I'm actually not sure we know the identity of at the moment. But I'm sure, honestly, that he has even more spread out all over the place. And now he's trying to get Mickey to create this other alliance that he would also potentially be a part of. And if you took all of this on paper, you would say Jimmy is very much running the house. Like he is in a really, really good spot. The problem is he can't hide the vibe he gives off, which spells out exactly where he thinks he stands in the house, which is that he is running the house. And so it's not exactly a secret. So Mickey did start to sort of make moves on this idea. She talked to Will about potentially creating some kind of alliance of outsiders. Not that we're outsiders, but maybe like in case there was something else going on, we might want to make an alliance. Like just think about who you trust. But in her pitch to Will, she also weirdly like let it slip that she intended for the alliance to only be temporary and then break it later on. Not entirely sure why she would pitch it like that, but I don't know. Maybe she just extra trusts Will. I'm not sure. We didn't see much of it. So that's kind of going on. But Mickey also talked a lot with Ashley, the veto winner. And they actually talked a bit about Jimmy and how Jimmy is playing so hard and is going to be a big target moving forward. Mickey tried to play up, I assume, a fake sense of like, yeah, I totally agree. We should try to take Jimmy out. It is unclear as of right now where Mickey would actually stand in that regard. But given that when she had the conversation with Jimmy about starting a new alliance, she went ahead and did the thing that they talked about, it does imply that she is still fairly loyal to to Jimmy as of right now. Ashley later went on to say that she only partially trusts Mickey because she is concerned about her potential connection to players like Jimmy, and that Ashley's true loyalties are with Amy and Rachel, which we will talk about later. So, so this is sort of the main structure of the game from Jimmy's perspective. He's got the heavy hitters, he's got the triple threat, he's got the triplets, he's got he's got Mickey going off and doing all this other stuff as well. And from his perspective, what he would really like to see happen this week is for Keanu to be the replacement nominee and for Keanu to be evicted. Why? Why does Jimmy want Keanu out? Keanu pissed him off in a couple of different ways. One is that Keanu told Jimmy, I don't really want to talk game. I think it's a little too early for that. I want to wait a little bit to see where the pieces fall, and then we can talk some game. Jimmy was not a fan of this. Additionally, like that, and that was just a kind of like, that was annoying to Jimmy. But then he found out that Keanu has been saying Jimmy's name. Keanu actually has been playing the game, just not with Jimmy. Just quite against Jimmy, in fact. There's some talk about them having some kind of beef, that some kind of public beef. They both say that the other one lied to them. Jimmy claims that Keanu did eventually try to make a final two with him. Then he catches Keanu saying that everyone should be targeting Jimmy. So there's a lot of stuff between Keanu and Jimmy. Keanu is going to spend the entire night trying to convince Vince to put Jimmy on the block. I say the entire night. He does eventually give up and switch to something else. But he spends a lot of time trying to convince Vince to put Jimmy on the block. Vince does not bite. Vince instead tells Jimmy about how Keanu has been trying to get him on the block. Jimmy subsequently spends much of the night trying to convince Vince to put Keanu on the block. And this is an important fact that we will elaborate on very, very shortly. So that's what Jimmy wants. We know that Morgan wants Zay out. Why does she want Zay out? Again, because Zay is part of this like bro contingent, and they are all unwilling to budge on Zay as a target, as a person they want to protect, I should say. And she thinks that Zay is really threatening because Zay knows how to play chess. In fact, taught people how to play chess in this house. Smarter than he looks, they feel. And she doesn't have a connection with him. She just really wants Zay gone. There are a couple other people that would like Zay gone, particularly some of the women in the house. I mentioned Rachel, Ashley, and Amy earlier. They appear to be a bit of a trio. Amy, of course, still on the block. Ashley taking herself off the block. And Rachel, they discussed the issue of Jimmy and how they think he's shady. They discussed going after some of the men in the house. They seem to really see the house as a bit of a men versus women situation, which is not generally how the heavy hitters seem to be looking at it. However, it is kind of shaping out to be a little bit like that, with many of the women feeling like the men are protecting each other because to some degree they are, at least when it comes to Zay. Rachel's inclusion in this trio and the amount with which they talk about Jimmy in a negative light heavily implies that Rachel is not super loyal to this Heavy Hitters Alliance and that it is not where she would like to put her pieces moving forward. She also had a conversation with Morgan where they talked about the guys trying to protect Zay. Rachel was just concerned about making sure that Amy was protected, but was also willing to engage in the conversation and sort of fan the flames that Morgan had for the rest of the alliance and the fact that they were all trying to protect Zay so much. They even talked about, like, do we even really like this alliance moving forward? So that's something to watch. But what I will say is that Morgan is much more closely linked to the other members of the Heavy Hitters socially than she is to Rachel. In fact, Amy and Ashley were talking about how they don't particularly like Morgan or trust her. And Rachel had to kind of be like, well, maybe we could try to work with her a little bit. And over the course of the rest of the night, despite airing some of her frustrations, Morgan did go back to this alliance time and time again and have conversations with them. She just doesn't seem to be super well connected outside of them at the moment. And so despite her frustrations, she might be a little trapped in this spot, especially if she doesn't feel comfortable reaching outside of her immediate, like, natural connections. So keep all of that in mind. There are a couple of people that I want to mention briefly, just to let you know about our lack of knowledge, essentially. Will, we did see talk to Mickey, as I mentioned, but otherwise was fairly absent from the feeds. He went to bed fairly early. Not a lot of talk about Will at all from much of the other house guests. Lauren, we did see some of. In fact, she had some conversations with Kelley and Riley. We'll talk about Kelley very shortly. Don't worry. Lauren did seem to have a good connection to Riley. They talked about playing the game together. Riley mentioned that he would keep her safe. She also seems to be in some kind of, like, flirtmance with Zach. Who would have guessed, given the episode so far? We've heard about this primarily from other people in the house, like Morgan, who does not like this relationship between Zach and Lauren. We've also heard about it from Zach himself. We have not actually heard a ton about it from Lauren herself. So I don't know exactly how invested she actually is in this potential flirtmance romance between Lauren and Zach. But we know that Zach is fairly invested in it. Obviously not enough to, like, impact a ton of his strategy at the moment, considering she's not really involved in many of these structures that he's a part of. But he can't really stop talking about it, and how he really feels like she was put in the house for him, and that that he really wants to do both, win Lauren's heart and the game. So take that for what you will. Slightly interesting fact about it. When he was talking to Vince about Lauren, Vince also said, "Oh, I love Lauren. She's so wholesome and sweet. There's not a lying bone in her body." To which Zach agreed. But we kind of hope this is not true. Based on what we've seen in the episode so far, she's a big fan of the show. And we do know that she was talking some pretty intense game with Riley. So it feels like a bit of a wrong read. But you never know. So that's Lauren. Ava also went to bed fairly early. Ava, not part of the main power structure, but she is well liked by them up in the HOH room, which, by the way, was basically Jimmy's room all night. If you didn't know that Vince was the HOH, you would have been very confused at the fact that the HOH Jimmy left the room at night to let Vince sleep there. But up in the HOH room, Jimmy, Morgan, and Zach were talking, and they mentioned Ava and how much they liked her. That they hadn't really liked her at first, but they have come around, and they feel like they've put out some feelers to talk game, and she seemed receptive, and they really liked that. So that is kind of where Ava stands at the moment. Adrian also went to bed fairly early. He is not seemingly connected to a lot of the people in the alliances. In fact, he seemingly was an option for Vince to nominate, or at least was somebody that Vince mentioned to people he doesn't particularly trust that he would consider nominating Adrian. But it's hard to say how valid, how true that is. And, Adrian is just kind of hanging out at the moment. And then Catherine is similarly kind of like loosely associated with some of the people in the big alliance. She seems to be connected to Lauren to some degree. She gets along with Morgan and Zach. Basically, like, there is for sure some kind of young pretty people group going on with a lot of these people. It's just that not all of them have been included in the actual alliance. So those are some of the people that weren't major players in the events of last night. But we now need to really properly get into what happened and what the plan is for the renomination, because it's pretty wild. So as you all saw in the episode, at least from outward appearances, it seemed as though Kelley full on came up with the idea to volunteer for the block for Vince. But he decided not to take her up on that offer. We were not super kind to Vince last night in the recap, but we said the by far smartest thing he did was not nominate Kelley. So, of course, seems his plan is to nominate Kelley now. For her part, Kelley no longer wants to go on the block. Kelley did spend, I would say, a decent amount of effort trying to convince Vince to not do this. But when I say decent amount of effort, I'm being generous, because it was a lot of well, I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think we should do this, but I'll do it for you. I will. You shouldn't put up Jimmy. You're right. That is really scary if you do that. So yeah, I'll do it. And just don't tell me beforehand, but I'll do it. Vince spends the first 4 hours of the live feeds seemingly talking with Kelley about how she is going to go up on the block, and then genuinely crying about it while doing so. Because he just has no other choice, guys. There's no other options for him to put on the block. He's not going to do Jimmy. He can't do Adrian. So they're too scary. What if they won the competition and then they were mad at him? Vince is going to spend the actual entire night talking about being worried about people being mad at him and what he's going to look like. And, well, because I just feel like I've already told people that I'm going to put Kelley up. So if I don't put Kelley up now, it's going to look like I'm kind of like a flip-flopper, So I just don't feel like Like maybe if we had talked about it earlier, but now I just feel like it's too late. There's like a whole day left, but that's not enough time. You know what I mean? Like I've already told so many people that I wanted to do that, so I don't know. Just killed my voice trying to do Vince. um so it was it was a frustrating night for me, to say the least. Because Vince is supposed to be a fan. Like, the thing is, frustrating to watch Kelley volunteer for the block, right? She's the one that came in saying she wanted to have a fresh take on Big Brother, and her fresh take was apparently put me on the block and send me home week 1. That's frustrating. But somehow, some way, the man who has been watching since season 16 and has been apparently a live feeder, I don't believe you, since season 18, genuinely spent the summer watching a man named Quinn Martin and then at his first opportunity decided, yeah, I just have no choice. Yeah, there is a player in here who considers me to be her number one and would do anything I say and really likes me and, is my friend, is one of my closest friends in the house. But I don't know. I just feel like if I don't put her up, everyone's going to be mad. So I think I have to do it. But what if I told you that, like, literally no other person in the house wants him to put up Kelley? What if I told you that over the course of the night, multiple people in his alliance are going to tell him, don't do that? Would you be surprised if I told you that? Would you also be surprised if I told you that that doesn't matter to him? He still feels like he wants to put Kelley on the block? Despite apparently genuinely crying about it. We'll get there. We'll get there. So, he has these conversations with Kelley. She eventually capitulates and says, "Okay, I'm down. I'm doing whatever you need me to do. Hopefully I don't leave. That would suck." Meanwhile, Keanu's trying to convince him to put up Jimmy. He's not biting. Keanu's then eventually going to try to whip up some votes for Kelley, which is not going to work. Keanu is our resident talk blocker at the moment. Every conversation that Keanu walks into turns into the same conversation where nobody's telling the truth, because nobody's telling Keanu the truth about anything, quite frankly. And Vince is crying, and he's crying, and he's crying, and he's crying, and he's saying, I just like, what will it look like? What will it look like if I don't do it? And I just don't want anybody to be mad at me. I just don't want anybody to be mad at me, and I don't want it to look weird. We eventually discover that while Vince does feel bad, he is actually totally fine with Kelley leaving. He knows that if he puts Kelley on the block, that she will likely leave, and that makes him very sad. But it's what he has to do, because she just wasn't good enough socially. And that's on her. And now it's what he has to do because she wasn't good enough. Pretty strange attitude. He also keeps calling her his friend. But I'm not entirely sure he understands the term. Because he calls her friend, a friend of his, a close friend of his, a good friend, one of his best friends in the house. But he also calls her Nat that he can keep caged. So, I'm just not sure, like, it's tracking for me. The idea that she's actually like a friend of his as much as just like somebody who he finds annoying that follows him around, maybe? I don't know. But he's certainly willing to put her on the block and potentially send her home. It's kind of seemingly your classic case of a player in the game who is struggling socially and therefore has like less value as a human. And you feel totally fine sort of like viewing them as such. Like Kelley, who is, seemingly otherwise to Vince, a lovely human. He talks about how she's like this quirky, lovely human. But because she, doesn't get along super well in the house, she's also an annoying gnat that he can cage and somebody that he can throw up on the block to mitigate a tiny bit of blowback for his HOH, at least in his mind. Pretty fascinating the way that the house can psychologically sort of influence the way that players view other humans. Read about more of that kind of thing in my book, Behind the Mirror. It's kind of one of the themes of my book. So that's going on. Vince really just wants to put Kelley on the block to sort of maintain that whole situation. Ashley and Mickey, as I mentioned, already talked about targeting the heavy hitters. Mickey and Will had that conversation. Jimmy, I want to talk about Jimmy a little bit more. Jimmy up in the HOH room, as I mentioned, was talking to Morgan. They had that whole situation. Through a whole night of like crying and explaining that Kelley has to go up on the block, Vince finally talks to Jimmy. And Jimmy, as I mentioned, doesn't want Kelley on the block. Jimmy wants Keanu on the block. And after a whole night of like just absolute nonsense coming from a lot of these people, I will say it was quite refreshing to me when Jimmy ends up straight up just saying to Vince's face, I got to be honest with you. It's not in your best interest to put Kelley on the block. She's like your number one ally. And Vince genuinely like can't comprehend this at first. He's like, yeah, but because she's my ally, she's not going to be mad at me if I put her up. And Jimmy's like, listen, you're going to look so stupid. Because if you put Kelley up on the block, she's going to go home. You know this. I'm voting her out if you put her up. Everyone's voting her out if you put her up. You're going to look so stupid using your own HOH week to send out your own ally who considers you to be their number one in the game. And Vince is like, I don't know. And I'm just like, thank God somebody's saying it. Like, on one hand, thank God somebody's saying it. On the other hand, Kelley can go. We don't need to actually convince Jimmy or Vince. Jimmy continues the play, because Jimmy's speaking the truth, but he's doing so in a self-interested fashion. He's saying this to try to convince Vince to put Keanu up on the block and send Keanu home instead. So he transitions to Keanu. He says that Keanu is somebody that a lot of people would be looking to take out. Also, Keanu's a big threat. Keanu's coming for him. Keanu is somebody that also could put you on the block regardless of whether you put him on the block or not. So why are you afraid to put up Keanu? Because basically the thing that Vince keeps saying is like, well, but if I put up Keanu, and then he wins the blockbuster, then he's going to be so mad at me. He later is going to say that he thinks that I just feel like if I put up Keanu, he's going to pop off, he's really going to pop off, and he's going to I don't know. It's just I don't want that to happen. And also, there was this thing that happened, which is right before the initial nominations, he asked me hey, bro, am I in trouble? You'd tell me if I was, right? And I was like, no, you're good. And so now I feel I don't know if that extends to replacement nominee, but I'm just not sure. But Jimmy actually does start making progress when he says, here's the thing, Keanu's been pissing everyone off. Everyone would be okay with this. Everyone would vote him out. Even Zach is mad at Keanu. Even Riley would be chill with Keanu leaving. All of these people. And Vince is like, what? But doesn't he, who are Keanu's people? And Jimmy says, he doesn't have anyone. Oh, so you're saying nobody would be mad at me if I put up Keanu except for Keanu? He's like, yes. Oh. Oh. And yeah, I mean, I think you're maybe right. I think I would look like an idiot if I put Kelley up and then she went home. She would do anything I say. I could look really stupid. Jimmy's like, yes, you could look really stupid. Oh man. Should we ask the others? I don't know. Isn't it too late? I just feel should we talk to some other people? Jimmy's like, sure, yeah. So they call in Zach and Morgan. Morgan is in this conversation. She's been wanting to hold a meeting. And this is the closest they get to a meeting. And her goal in this conversation is, I want Zay gone. So when they start talking about Keanu, she's like, who cares about Keanu? I want Zay gone. Why are we protecting Zay? And Jimmy's like, we're not talking about Zay. And she's like, I just feel what's happening with, do you know that he taught half the house to play chess? And Jimmy starts saying, listen, I just think that Keanu makes more sense. And Morgan says, I just feel I don't know about Keanu. I just feel Zay. And Jimmy says, I'm not talking to you, Rachel. I'm talking to Zach. Or sorry, I'm not talking to you, Morgan. I'm talking to Zach. And so then they all kind of look at Zach. And Vince is like, what do you think, Zach? Tell me what I should do. And Zach is like, I don't know. I just feel just do the easy thing and put Kelley on the block. Right? Gets the least blood on your hands. And he's like, oh, but I just feel like, what about Keanu? Like, if would you be mad if Keanu went up? He's like, not really, but like, I don't really care either way. He's like, oh, okay, well, I'm just not sure. Um, but Zach is kind of still stuck on this, like, yeah, just get the least amount of blood in your hands. That kind of feels like Kelley, no? I thought this is what you were doing. And he's like, oh yeah. But then the conversation keeps getting derailed by the Morgan versus Jimmy of it all. And so Jimmy ends up leaving and with Morgan, and they end up talking downstairs and trying to hash out their differences. And Vince is starting to come back around to Kelley. He's like, yeah, maybe, I came into this game, I'm not really much of a risk taker. I don't even really gamble or anything. So I was like, I'm going to do the risky thing. I feel like putting Kelley up is like high risk, high reward. Sorry. Also, when Jimmy was there, that's when part of the reason Jimmy started to come back around is that, sorry, I skipped a bit here. Zach makes the pitch because I mentioned Morgan is looking at Zay. Zach is not really interested in this conversation about Keanu because Zach also has an agenda here. Zach wants Amy gone. So when they're talking about Keanu, he's like, whatever about Keanu isn't the easy thing, Kelley. My point is, I think we should take out Amy. Zach really wants Amy gone. Why does he want Amy gone? That is the question, right? Zach wants Amy gone because he hates floaters. Yes, you heard that correctly. Zach says, the reason I came into this game was to target all the floaters and get them out of the house. I can't even look Amy in the face. She does literally less than nothing in this game. She's such a floater. She's the biggest floater I've ever seen next to Angela from last season. Interesting. Interesting thought process. So that kind of gives you a sense of who Zach is and where he stands in the game. But he really wants Amy out. And this is what changes Vince's mind back to Kelley. Because Zach starts saying, well, the thing is, you're making some sense, Vince. It would be stupid of you to send Kelley out the door. You're totally right. But Kelley doesn't have to leave. I think Amy should be the one to leave. And that's when Vince is like, oh, yeah. That's when he makes the gnat comment. Like, I could keep the gnat caged by putting her on the block and keeping her and then keeping her contained. And so he starts to feel like that is where the comment came from about high risk. He feels like the high risk play is put Kelley on the block and then keep her. Okay. Okay. What are we doing? To make matters worse, when he talks to Zach, he starts going over the votes. He goes, okay, so we're keeping Kelley if she's on the block against Amy. And they start counting the votes. Actually, we'll get there in a moment. Because first what happens is he talks to Zach. He talks about high risk. Then Morgan comes back in the room. They start talking about the alliance as a whole. They start talking about Riley and why he doesn't want to ever be seen with them and why he's even in the alliance in the first place. They're confused about all of it. And they talk about Rachel and how she doesn't want Amy to go and all this stuff. Morgan then eventually leaves, and slightly before she leaves, Vince kind of says like, okay, so yeah, I think the plan is I think I do the high risk play and I put Kelley on the block. And Zach at that point says, now that we've kind of talked it over, I think it is kind of stupid of you to put Kelley on the block. I think it's actually a pretty bad idea. I think Keanu does make more sense. Because Zach at this point realizes, number one, Kelley on the block, Keanu on the block doesn't really matter. He just wants Amy gone, and he was just doing whatever he needed to do to make sure that Amy was the target in that conversation. Once Amy was the consensus target in the conversation, he was like, oh, well, now I can think about what you're actually asking me, and yes, you're correct. It would be a terrible, stupid idea for you to put Kelley on the block. So this is what I'm talking about when I'm like, hey, the people in Vince's alliance are telling him this is a bad idea. Don't do this. And his response to Zach is, yeah, I don't know. I just feel like it's not. It is a good play. Because we can just keep her. I mean, and like best case scenario, Zay just wins the battle, the blockbuster, and then we vote out Amy over Kelley. And Zach is like, I mean, keep Zay safe, take out Amy. I guess that works for me. I mean, I don't think it's smart, but sure. And Vince is like, yeah, and then we could probably get the votes, right? Like, and then they start counting votes. And I actually it's hard for me to believe that this is happening. They start counting votes, and Vince is getting up to 7. He starts counting votes. He does not include Jimmy because he knows Jimmy's not on board, and Jimmy wanted to vote out Kelley. So he's saying essentially, screw Jimmy. We don't need him in this vote. He's not counting Rachel because he knows that Rachel is going to be pissed if they try to vote out Amy. So he's kind of saying, screw Rachel. I'm going to head with this vote. And he gets to 7. A tenuous 7 votes. And goes, all right, so I think we can do it. Because he can break the tie. There are 14 votes total. 7 would make it a tie. In a situation where it's Kelley versus Amy, and he is desperate to take out Amy and keep Kelley. He also then considers the idea of, well, I guess worst case scenario is like Amy wins the blockbuster. Hopefully that doesn't happen. I mean, the worst case scenario already happened when Amy won the veto, or when Ashley won the veto. So, I mean, that would really suck. Zay versus Kelley. Like, what would we do then? And Zach says, well, we're keeping Zay and we're evicting Kelley. He's like, yeah, right. Yeah, you're totally right. When Morgan's in the room too, he keeps saying like, what should I do? What should I do, Morgan? And Morgan says, just honestly, I don't do whatever is best for you. Just do what you want to do. He said, yeah, I get do what I want to do, but like, what would you do? She's like, I would do what I wanted to do. It's like, yeah, but what should I do? I've seen this going around. Like, people are like, man, maybe first HOHs have just lost their juice. I'm going to fervently disagree with that still. The issue with Vince, the issue with people like Frenchie and Angela are self-evident. The issue with people like Daniel Durston is evident. Riley got a little screwed. But the issue with Vince is not that he is the first HOH. It's actually the opposite. It's that Vince doesn't want to be the HOH. He's doing everything in his power to give up his power. If Vince wanted to be the first HOH, he would be like literally anything would be better than what he's doing. But if he actually wanted to have this power and used it, he would not be in this situation. There are so many outs he has, so many other options, other paths he could take. But again, despite having apparently just watched season 26, he is genuinely using the phrase, I have no other choice. I have to put up my best friend in the house. Anyway. So that's kind of where we left off. With Vince's entire alliance telling him, do what you want to do, but also it's pretty stupid if you put up Kelley. And him saying, guys, if me putting up Kelley doesn't prove my loyalty, I don't know what will. And they're like, we don't want you to put up Kelley. It's like, you got me. My hands are tied. I'm putting up Kelley. Oh, man. So that's where we stand heading into the morning. The veto ceremony is likely going to take place today. Vince currently plans to put up Kelley. And this is big, right? Because the plan is for them to, from Vince's point of view now, to vote out Amy, which Rachel is adamantly against. Now, Jimmy and Vince both talked about really liking Rachel, but Zach is kind of feeling like, screw Rachel if she wants to keep Amy, because she's protecting a floater and floaters suck and I hate them. So if we need to make Rachel mad by taking out Amy, so be it. So this is likely going to cause some waves. I mean, he's not doing what Jimmy wants him to do by putting up Keanu. Jimmy prefers for Kelley to go over Amy. Rachel is really protective of Amy. And if this plan follows through in any way, there's very likely going to be some kind of civil war happening here, because Rachel, I don't think, is going to back down. And even if somehow Amy does win the blockbuster, and they have to consider that possibility, there's further contention with the Zay vote, because Rachel is also down to take Zay out over Kelley. And Vince is willing to keep Zay over Kelley as well, because Vince unfortunately lost his spine in a tragic accident entering the Big Brother house. So it's a very messy situation, and this heavy hitters alliance, as I mentioned at the start of this podcast, seems destined to just explode. I mean, the incentives are all over the place. The different agendas are completely conflicting, and the players seem totally content with just full on targeting one another and all kinds of stuff that's happening here. So, all that said, too, I mentioned Riley, who is theoretically a part of this alliance, is like, when talking with other people in the house, talking up Jimmy as a big threat, talking up Zach as a big threat, saying we should take Zach down. Why is he saying these things? I'm not sure. I don't know if he actually means it or if he's just working really hard to maintain his cover. But he seems like a full-on wild card in the situation. And I really actually don't know where he stands in much of it at all. And when it comes to a vote, it is actually fairly close. There is a decent amount of people that are on the side of taking Zay out of the game. There are a decent amount of people that will be pushing for Amy to leave. And there are, I would say, a majority of people that would all be fine with seeing Kelley leave. So who knows at this point? I think that's mostly what I have for you. I'll open the chat to some questions if you would like. We can try and maybe fill in some holes. But there's definitely a lot to continue to learn over the next couple of days for where the house really stands, where people really stand in certain places. All we know is that Vince has somehow managed to make Daniel Durston's HOH look competent, which is it's a tall task, Are there signed copies of my book left? Yes, as long as you pre-order the book from the link on taranarmstrong.com. You pre-order it from the book catapult there. You will get a signed copy. I plan to go to the bookstore when they get their order around the publish date and sign all of those books, which will be very fun and challenging, I imagine. Where can we chat now that the chat feature is gone? Yeah, the chat feature is gone from the live feed page. I am live right now on Twitch still, and I do have a chat on Twitch. If you want to chat, you can chat in there. There's a bunch of people in there right now chatting about the live feeds. I've been keeping an eye on it as we've been doing this podcast. And apparently Keanu's already been up to some nonsense, talking to people and making a bit of a fool of himself. I will likely also be streaming on YouTube from time to time, but the 24-hour stream was on Twitch just because YouTube has trouble with extra long streams. Is Keanu still playing D&D today? Keanu did have a lengthy explanation about his D&D, situation, and they do plan to play. Who knows if he actually goes through with it? I would imagine if he got nominated, he might not, but he doesn't seem to be nominated at the moment. Are Keanu, Vince, and Kelley in an alliance? Not really, no. It appeared that Keanu might be working with Jimmy, but the reality seems to be, working with Vince, but the reality seems to be that Keanu is not really, I say this. There is a larger alliance that Keanu believes to be real. It's an 8-person alliance. I don't know every member of it because it is incredibly fake, and apparently nobody really believes that it's real other than Keanu, and like maybe a tiny bit Kelley, because I think Kelly's a part of that too. But the bottom line is that it's not real in anyone's mind, and not particularly relevant. First day play impressions from by player. We can do a quick rundown. Will seems to be doing fine. There was talk from Rachel Ashley and Amy about how Will is playing both sides, meaning I would imagine the men and the women, and that he is perhaps a bit of a floater in that regard. Zach is doing very well, I would say, in the house. He is being looked at, but he obviously has his extra safety power. He's got a bit of a budding showmance. He has a lot of influence in the main power structure. Zach is definitely one to look out for at the moment, despite his, I would say, my description, obnoxious standpoint on what he deems to be floaters and the criteria with which he uses that term. Mickey, I think, is in a fairly decent spot. She is connected to many of the people on the outside while is still being protected by the main power structure, one that is seemingly doomed to fail regardless. So her lack of inclusion in it doesn't seem to be a major hindrance to her at the moment. I also liked the gumption that she had to actually start to form some kind of counter alliance, given that she wasn't included in the main one. I think that willingness to go out and play is a good thing. Ashley with the veto. Definitely wins some respect, has some connections. I haven't heard much about like targeting her moving forward, but she was the target for this week, and it wouldn't surprise me if this power structure stayed in power, if they would go after Ashley again. But given that they don't seem to potentially be in a position to stay in power, that might not matter. If she's able to keep hold of Amy, that would be very good for her. If she does lose Amy, that would be very bad for her. Zay is doing pretty well socially, I would say. People like him, and he seems competent. He's just on the block and a big target right now. He could definitely end up leaving at the end of the week, but he's no slouch right now. Riley, just like I said, a bit of a wild card. Definitely a lot more chill than you might have imagined from his pregame interviews. He is good one-on-one with people. He did get a bit emotional a few times, and seems to be perhaps struggling a bit with that in the house. But overall, it's just hard to say exactly where he stands and how well he will do in the game. Kelley, just a hot mess all over the place. Amy is, I would say, doing like not great, obviously. She's being labeled a floater by Zach, which is, I don't think, fair at all. But she is obviously like fiercely loyal to her people, and she is just trying to survive the block at the moment, but not looking amazing for her right now. Lauren, I think that the fact that people are talking about her like she's an innocent lamb is a fairly good thing at this point in the game. She is connected to many of the people in the power structure, and if and when it explodes, she's in a fine position to benefit from that and be taken in by multiple sides. Even though she is connected to those people, a lot of people outside of the power structure also felt comfortable talking to Lauren, and all of that is very good. All of that said, I haven't really seen a ton from her in the way of gameplay, but her conversation with Riley was fairly promising. So I'd keep an eye on Lauren. Morgan, I like. I like that she's not backing down from the Zay situation, but I do fear she will eventually do so. She's basically learning right now that her influence in this structure is very minimal, that she doesn't really have much in the way of sway in this group. The part of the conclusion at the end of the night for Vince and Zach were that they wanted to take Morgan and kind of split away from the what were they called? Heavy hitters, and form a bit of a trio with the two of them plus Morgan, which is kind of silly because Morgan still wants Zay gone. But we'll see where all that goes. I do think that Morgan talking to Rachel is promising, but she doesn't seem to have the connections outside of this power structure to actually do a proper split from it. So she's kind of caught between a rock and a hard place at the moment. Ava seems like a promising player in a decent position. Not really part of any power structure at the moment, but decently liked, and has a decent enough social capital that she wasn't, thrown out as an option as a pawn or something. But I didn't really see her play the game last night because she was in bed pretty early. Keanu, bit of a hot mess. Rachel doing really well. Super happy to see Rachel on the feeds. I mentioned this on my stream, but it has been like 15 years since I watched Rachel on the feeds, and for me, that's like half my life. I was like a teenager when I watched Rachel on the live feeds the last time, and so my memory is going to probably gravitate toward some of the bigger moments, but it's wild the contrast of Rachel on the feeds in my memory, which is her like yelling about Cassie or like baby talking with Brendan, to the Rachel we see now, so chill, so like calmly effective in the game. It's very interesting to see, and I think very promising. But her position is not incredible. I mean, it's much better than I think I imagined it would be, given what we saw in the episodes. She has been included in this big power structure, which is wild. But she doesn't have any real power in that power structure at the moment, and many of her people are outside of it. So the big question is she able to leverage her position in that group to keep the other people that she wants to work with safe and eventually lead some kind of revolution against it? And right now, it's not looking amazing, but we'll see. Jimmy, I was in some ways more impressed with, in other ways less impressed with. I think that he's a really smart guy, but he's a bull in a china shop. Like this guy he has no chill. He just goes straight from 0 to 100 at all times, and no subtlety whatsoever to his approach. And I have a feeling that that's not going to work super well. But in a world where other people are scared to do things, it can be effective. But he seems like he's on a path for danger, perhaps some kind of crash out. Adrian, again, didn't really see much of him last night, so hard to say. I would say in general, very neutral on Adrian, maybe neutral negative. He doesn't seem like overly well liked, but he's certainly not he's not like hated or anything, but he seems to have very little power in the game. We'll see where that goes. Vince, I think my thoughts on Vince. Catherine seems like in a fine position. The power structure talked about wanting to talk more with Catherine. No complaints about Catherine at the moment, other than just like she seems a little bit slow on the uptake for getting involved in the power structure or having any solid like strategic alliances. But I don't think that's too bad yet, especially given how messy this whole thing is. So that's my rundown. That was a long answer to a question, but hopefully you enjoyed that. Let's see. Who has surprised me so far? Who has surprised? I mean, I think Vince in the episode to Vince on the feeds did not surprise me. I was pretty. You heard me last night on the recap. I was pretty like, what is Vince doing? I guess I'm surprised at just how absolutely bad he was on the feeds, even after the episode. But it's surprising to me overall, because he is supposed to, know the show. But what are you gonna do? Have Kat and Ashley interacted since Showergate? As far as I know, they haven't had much interaction. Not that I've seen, at least. But I'm sure they've talked since then. It's just not that we saw in the feeds last night. Is Adrian in any alliances? I would be surprised if he wasn't in any alliances, but we don't know about them at the moment, just because we haven't really seen much of him. Let's see here. Any other questions? Who do I think is in the best position, and how do I see it changing? I think right now it is probably Zach. I think Zach is probably in the best position at the moment, would be what I'm going to say there. But I will also say that is contingent on success for his plan this week, and that the plan this week also doesn't blow up in his face, which it very well could. pissing off Rachel Riley to take out Amy. I would honestly say the plan would be better if he just took out Kelley. Although Kelley does seem to like Zach, so maybe it wouldn't even be great for Zach if that happened. I'm actually going to say again, I think the better play for Zach is if Keanu had gone up on the block and he could send Keanu home. Because Keanu's the kind of player that would be willing to put Zach on the block next to Jimmy. And Keanu doesn't seem to have much connection to Zach. You don't have to piss Rachel off to vote out Keanu. You get to keep both Kelley, who likes you, and Zay, who's one of your bros. Like, it just kind of feels like a no-brainer, but what are you going to do? Outside of decision making, I'm not saying Zach is the best player right now, but I think his position is the best at the moment. All right. That is what we have for the first live feed update of the season. I hope you enjoyed. Of course, the first update always a bit scattered, but hopefully we managed to thread our way through this, navigate through these waters, and you have a better understanding of where the pieces fall, where the structure is, and what happened last night. Because it was wild. There's not usually like a wild story to tell from the first night of feeds. It's usually just talking about the structure. But man, it was a wild ride. And I do believe that as of right now, we are currently planning to see Kelley up on the block. And I would say, honestly, at this point, Kelley probably the most likely person to be sent home. I do think they end up backing off of this Amy plan because it's just too hazardous. It blows up their entire lines for no reason. And Vince is willing to give up Kelley, and Zach isn't that pressed about Kelley. So it would not surprise me at all if this fell back onto Kelley. But that's what we have. That's what we have. So happy to be back talking about the feeds. I'll be live every single morning, updating you on everything that happens the day before on the Big Brother 27 live feeds. Make sure you stay tuned. Make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you do all of those things that people do with things. Make sure you head over to taranarmstrong.com and check out the book. Very excited about it. If you want to ask me more questions about the book or anything else, I am live on Twitch right now. If you're listening to this on Monday, I'm probably live right now, even if you're not listening to this live, because I will be continuing to stream all day long. Watching the feeds, analyzing, predicting, talking about books, all sorts of fun stuff like that. So check it all out. And also just like side note, again, I mentioned this to Rob, but like this is 10 years now that I've been doing this. And the biggest thing for me, like the most meaningful part for me is doing these live feed updates. They're my baby. These are my pride and joy. And so every single one of you here, watching, listening to these live feed updates, you mean a lot to me. I appreciate that you find value in what I do, and it is because of you that I have this as a career, that I've been lucky enough to be able to do this for so long, and that there were publishers out there that believed in my ability to write and sell a book, which fulfills a childhood dream. I always wanted to be a writer. And there were some people that said, I don't think the Big Brother audience is going to buy books. But hopefully we're going to prove them wrong. And I again just really appreciate all of you. Very excited to be talking with you all season long for Big Brother 27. Stay tuned for all the other coverage. We will be doing the roundtable tonight to do a bit of a stock watch. And I'll be back tomorrow, of course, to update you on everything that happens today on the Big Brother 27 27 live feeds. Thank you so much. And I will see all of you next time.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.